The Chaunce Hayden Show is sponsored by Stitcher Radio. Listen on the go via the Stitcher mobile app. For more information, go to stitcher.com/GFQ. Location provided by Sapphire New York. Visit them at nysapphire.com.
You think you have me all down, you think you have me, I will always be one step ahead.
Don't hurt me, for real. Look at her teeth! No, she has fangs, I'm not even kidding. Oh God, oh my God, are you insane? Hey everybody, welcome to the Chaunce Hayden Show, broadcasting live from the world's greatest gentlemen's club in New York City, Sapphire, the VIP room where anything can happen. This is our home base where we broadcast from, and every week is an adventure. This week is no different. Tonight on the show, we have Chuck Zito. Chuck Zito has done the show once before where he broke the exclusive story that he would be starring in Sons of Anarchy on the FX show. Well, it turns out Chuck was right. Chuck has become a big star on the show, and he's going to come on tonight to talk about his fame since becoming the breakout FX TV star. But besides Chuck, we have a good pal of his. Apparently, if you're a boxing fan, and even if you're not a boxing fan, you may know about this story. Arturo Gatti was murdered in 2009. He was one of the greatest boxers of all time. Well, tonight, we're going to find out what really happened behind that murder. Apparently, Chuck Zito and a friend of his who has spent his life savings doing research on what really happened and how this great boxer was murdered. We're going to find out that story, and it's going to be exclusive here on the GFQ Network, the Chaunce Hayden Show. But before they come in, have to say one thing. So everybody knows I publish a magazine called Metropolis Nights, and every month we do an interview. So this past week, I interviewed one of the stars of a reality show called The Shores of Sunset. Never seen it, never heard of it, but apparently it's like the biggest show on TV. The newest cast member, her name is Lily. She is on the cover of Metropolis Nights this week, and I had a long conversation with her about Persians and Iranians and Americans. And what makes it so fascinating is that Andrew, who actually is the boss, the owner of the GFQ Network where we broadcast from, that's his tribe. He's one of those people. So when I brought up to Andrew before the star of the show that Lily is going to be on the cover, the second I said Persian, his eyes lit up. Andrew, what do you know about being like you are? Like really, you could be on the show, The Shores of Sunset. You're one of those people.
I'm not Persian,
but you could totally pass.
I can pass.
How
yeah.
close to Persian are you? Like you're right there.
Very close.
Very close.
Yeah.
And what we talk about in the interview is how good looking they are and how everyone is so hooked into the Persian community now. Where when I was growing up, we arrested Persians. If you were Persian, you were thrown in jail for being a terrorist. But now all of a sudden they're like supermodels. Why are you people considered so good looking? What is it about Persians and Iranians and that whole culture that you're surrounded with?
Well, Persians aren't Arabs. They're Persian.
But why? But no one even said the word Arab. So why would you?
No, but
Arab?
like when you think of a terrorist, you think of like Arabs and fundamental.
I think anybody with dark hair, with thick dark hair and dark eyes.
I think the guys on that show, like all the people on that show, most of them are Jews too. They're
gays. They're Jews.
They're great.
They're a little bit of everything.
I love them.
But they know what they look like. They look like they're from Egypt. Why do they all look Egyptian to me?
I don't know.
When I think of
Egyptians are Arabs.
When you look at Lily, who's on the cover of Metropolis Nights, to me she looks like Cleopatra. She has long, skinny eyes. She has the long, skinny nose, the thick black dark hair, the thin body, those big exotic dark eyes. Isn't that what we think of when we think of Cleopatra?
I think it comes down to the eyes only.
I think
it's the almond-shaped
and
eyes.
the nose. It's that long, thin nose and the full lips. It's beauty personified.
Listen, it depends. I mean, I think it depends. A lot of the ones that are here are the westernized ones that got out right before the revolution. So you're seeing a totally different group of people compared to what's happening in the country now.
You're talking about the revolution. Would you have been one of those brave guys? Would you have been a guy holding a machine gun, or would you have been hiding in the basement? Like, are you? Do you feel that you're like a revolutionary?
No.
When you see yourself, would you be one of those crazy guys on the street with a bandana around your face?
No, there's a revolution in this country. I'm going to Canada.
You're not a fighter. That's not your thing.
Depends how many pills and how much I've drank that day.
But do you have that in you? Do you have that crazy blood in you that makes you want to fight and kill the government?
No, not the government, but I'm hot-headed, so.
You do?
Yeah.
So here we had 9/11, we have terrorism. What is it about your culture that makes you want to fuck people up? Like, when you're mad, you want to destroy the enemy. Whoever it is that you're mad at, you want to eliminate them from the earth. Is that true?
Yeah, but I want to hurt them, like, financially now. Like, I've come to that point. Like,
Right.
I want to destroy someone financially where, like, I want to affect them in a way that they can't even provide for their family.
See, that's interesting you say that, because the whole entire show, Shores of Sunset, it's all about money and having Mercedes Benzes and gold. One of the women on the show, Asa, how do you say it? A-S-A. What is that? Asa?
Asa? I don't know.
Asa.
I don't know.
There's a woman on the show named Asa. She's coming out next year with diamond water. They're actually infusing diamond into the water. Everything's about money. That's how they fight, they play. Everything they do in their life involves money. So you're that culture.
A lot of gaudiness, too.
A lot of gaudiness.
Like gold,
it's gaudy
everything.
Money. Gold.
Do you remember? Okay. Do you remember where in The Sopranos when Johnny Sacks' daughter got married? Do you remember that?
Of course.
Okay. The place that they did it at was called Leonard's. It's right by my house. It's this Italian big, gaudy reception hall.
Right.
That's my uncle's house.
Really?
That's what my uncle's house looks like. I mean, columns and naked, statues everywhere. It's the most gaudy thing in the world.
Really? But you're not really.
Gold, everything.
But that's not your lifestyle. You're
No.
not gaudy.
No, I'm not gaudy. But I mean, like.
But you are so Persian looking. I see you, Andrew, when I see you, and unfortunately the camera can't see you right at this moment, but anyone who's been a fan of this network and this show knows exactly who I'm talking to. You are, in my mind, the best looking man in the world. Like, everything that's considered good looking in life is in our culture, in the American culture.
Well, I'm not tall. I'm only 5'10".
You're tall enough. Yeah,
I'm
but
5'10".
5'10" is fine. And if you're 5'8", you're in trouble. But your height's fine. It's not a bad height. Your hair is so black and thick. You have a perfect goatee. You have those beautiful dark Persian
I have good eyes. Yeah, my eyes are my thing.
What is it like being so damn good looking? And what makes me even more fascinated is that, and I love your wife. Your wife, to me, is not only beautiful, but she's one of the best people I've ever met in my entire life. So I can understand you marrying her. But why, you're so young, the things that you could be doing as a single man that looks like you is off the charts to me.
That's so I was talking to Maria about that right when you walked in. That was a conversation we were having. Like, I don't know what it would be like to go out on a date.
You're so good looking.
Because Jess and I have been together since I was 24. No, 20. Since I was 21, she was 18, 19. So I don't know what it's like to go and date in my 20s.
Do you
like,
realize,
all I needed was $100 and a nice car.
Yeah. Do you understand the way you look all through your 20s, the life you would have? Every night you could go to a club and bring home an attractive, gorgeous woman. Literally every single night. Where in my realm, in the Chaunce Hayden world, when you look at this face and you look at who I am and how I conduct myself, what I could do in 6 months, maybe, would be a daily occurrence in your life. How do you give it up? Why do you give it up?
I don't know. I get laid a lot, and I got a good-looking wife, so it doesn't matter to me.
See, this is what I think. This is my impression. A guy who looks like me
should be married instantly.
Yeah,
like giving away at 6.
But we don't want to. We want to try and have the life that you could have. And what makes it such a great oxymoron is that the guy who looks like you lives like a guy who looks like me should live, but it never works out the way. good-looking people seem to get married very early in life.
And I don't go out. Like, I'm a total recluse.
If I could be you for a week, if I could get inside your body for a week and go to clubs, do you realize the life and the time I would have?
But I did all of that. I went to clubs. I got laid.
You're so young. You could have done it for the next 20 years.
I could have, yeah.
But is it that you did it so much? It was
I did
so
it a
easy?
lot, yeah.
Do you think it was so easy? It came so
Very
easy
easy,
to you?
very easy.
That you actually lose. It's like a rock star. It's like being
It
in Bon
doesn't matter,
Jovi.
yeah.
After a while, it doesn't even mean anything anymore. The relationship means more than the sex.
Like, it would become like a game we would play. Like, we would go to a bar, and we would play a game where we, like, my friends and myself, like, we would tell outlandish lies, like, totally make
but
stuff up.
But we did too.
But like it would be like, okay, how ridiculous can it be, and how bad can your pickup line be, and you still pick someone
Right.
up?
We did the same thing.
Like, we would do that all the time.
I was
like,
a brain surgeon certain nights.
10-meter dive. I was qualifying for Athens. This was the best one I ever told. I went to a party and I was walking with a limp.
Yes.
Because I had hurt my ankle playing football. And the girl goes, "What happened? Beautiful blonde. What happened
Right.
here?" I'm like, "Well, you know, the Olympics are happening right now in Athens." She's like, "Yeah, this is 2004." I'm like, "Well, I was qualifying for the Olympics and I hurt myself in the 10-meter dive."
Right.
She bought it up. I got laid that night.
See, but you didn't have to do that. That's my point. Is that you're so good looking. You could say, I don't have a job. I don't have any money. I want a good looking woman to support me. You would find beautiful, stunning, rich women that would bring you in just to be a part of their life. That's how good looking you are.
I would do that now.
So that's what I'm saying.
Like, if I could do it again,
Do you
I
ever
would
wish?
probably.
Do you ever regret being married? Am I putting you on a spot?
No, I've never
Are there
regret it.
nights when you say, "God, I wish I was still single"?
No, I don't feel like that because I don't go out and I don't do things, so it doesn't matter to me. Like, I can still live a single life. My wife doesn't care.
Yeah,
Like,
but
I
you
could
can't.
go
But
out
can you
and-
go home? You can't date women. You can't go out and have
No,
sex.
it's a pain in the ass anyway. Too much work.
Not for you though. For me.
No, it's
not for
always
you.
work. It's always work. It's always work. And if someone says, "Oh, you could just go out and get laid and
Yeah.
that's it," like, they always get clingy and they start calling, and you're always going to encounter that.
Yeah.
It gets really
I
weird.
don't know, Andrew. I wish I was you. Anyway, so I did a whole story on the shores of Sunset. You can look for it in the February issue of Metropolis Nights. But when I see these people, I think of one person, Andrew. All I can think of is Andrew, because this is in my mind, they might as well film the show in Queens. It's your family. The Shores of Sunset is your family. All the crazy speaking languages and the
Okay, you met my cousin here.
Yeah, all good
Do you
looking.
think my cousins look like that?
yes.
No, they're pretty fair-skinned. I don't think so.
I think everyone in your family looks like that.
Everybody, we all look like the gay guy with the mustache on
Yeah,
the show.
yeah. Everybody's metrosexual. You're all dark-haired, good-looking, semi-gay people, and all the women are beautiful. Every woman is beautiful. Every single woman in your family. I've seen pictures. Your dad. I've seen pictures of your father. Your father may have been one of the best-looking men on the face of the earth. Right? Am I wrong?
No, I come from
I don't
good
think
genes.
I don't think there was a man ever born better looking than your father in his heyday.
My grandfather
Oh,
was
your
good looking, too.
grandfather.
You've seen
That's
that
what I meant.
picture?
I'm sorry. I meant your grandfather. I've seen pictures of your grandfather, and he could have been a Hollywood superstar. That's how good looking he was.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. I hate you. But anyway, so that's the February cover. We have a great show tonight. This is going to be incredible. This whole thing with Arturo Gatti is going to be fascinating. Even if you're not a boxing fan, do not flip around the internet. Do not go to other channels. Do not go jerk off to Pornhub. Spend a few minutes watching this because I think you're going to find it fascinating. We'll be back with Chuck Zito right after this break. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Chaunce Hayden Show. And tonight it's a little different than a lot of the past shows that we've had here. We've been here for many years, a lot of good times. But tonight it's a little more of a serious tone. Tonight we're talking, of course, to the great Chuck Zito. He's been on the show before. When Chuck is on the show, you're talking about a legend. There's no secret. Chuck, the last time you were on the show, I think it was one of the most watched episodes we ever had. There's something about you that people are fascinated with. When you speak, people shut up and listen because what you say means a lot to people.
Yeah.
You know, and you also broke a great story with us when you were on the show last time. You said that You told us the tale about the FX hit show.
Oh, right.
You know, Sons of Anarchy.
Sons of Anarchy, yeah.
Everybody, you told the story. It was a great story. How really was your idea? And am I being inaccurate by saying that you actually were the one who first came up with the idea for?
Well, we talked about that, but in 2004 I went to FX with my book and my treatment and my idea and everything. They turned around and said, after we were in the room for an hour, they'll think about it. 2 weeks later, they called and says, well, we don't want to do a motorcycle series, so we pass.
And we know what happened.
And a year
next.
later, I went in with different representation. They said, we can't take the meeting where we work on a motorcycle series. And the rest is all history. I mean, we went through this the last time we were on
right.
your show,
We talked about it.
We talked about it.
But you know what's amazing?
Guess what? You know what? I wound up, there's an old saying, you can't beat them, join them, and I wound up joining them.
But you know, I think you scared the living. Can I say the living shit out of the people at FX, where they said we either got to pay this guy or we got to make him a star of the show, and you went on and you took the part. You took the side of put me on the show.
Well, what happened was there's a thing called summary judgment where you go in. Now you got to realize I walked in with my lawyer, and FX walked in with 5 lawyers from 3 different law firms. But I had a chance to do depositions with everybody that was involved in the show. And it's up to the judge if he wants to go to trial or he could dismiss it. He chose to dismiss it. He took the studio side, says, I don't think they stole Mr. Zito's idea. I think it was self-created, and I dismiss it. So I appealed it, of course. And in between that process there, because it would have took another 2 years to go to a court again, appeals and everything else. So with that, Kurt Sutter, who is the creator of the show, Sons of Anarchy, he reached out to my lawyer and he wanted to meet me because he saw me in a deposition. And tell you the truth, after I sat down with him, I liked the guy, and we became good friends. So I became, of course, Katie.
You ended up being on the show. Not only just being on the show, but I know people that have no connection to you and I.
Yes.
That when you mention Sons of Anarchy, the first word is Chuck Zito. Chuck Zito. You became a breakout star on the show, and people love you on the show.
Yes. I did Howard Stern the day before. And between myself and Howard Stern, it became the highest rated show in the history of FX. Not just Sons of Anarchy, the history
and
of
FX. They've had some great
And that was
shows.
the 5th season. That never happens.
Amazing.
Never happens.
Amazing.
But I would have loved to stay on the show and do the next few seasons, but it wasn't meant to be. If I wrote the show, I would still be there.
Yeah, you got killed off.
I got killed, yeah.
How could you kill off Chuck Zito?
Yeah,
how does that happen? Who had the balls?
balls?
I can imagine getting the call from Chuck Zito, the writer, one day saying, "Hey, it's Chuck. So what happened?"
But you know what? I got on the show. They opened me with open arms, and they welcomed me with open arms, and it was great. Every one of them was great I enjoyed going to work every day.
Other opportunities have come from the show?
No, not really. I mean, I didn't get anything from it, but just the motorcycle. I mean, just things like Outlaw Biker.
Outlaw Biker did an entire issue on Chuck Zito.
That's never happened before.
Yeah, right.
That's never happened before. They did a whole issue about myself and the Sons of Anarchy and the motorcycle I built for the Sons. And I'm getting a lot of people call me about that, and every day, I mean, everybody's just saying how great the show was with me on it and everything, and I appreciate it.
I always had a theory about you, Chuck, and I still believe it to this day, that the only thing that's ever held you back is people are afraid of you, that you have so much charisma, and you're acting. You're a great actor. You've proven it on Sons of Anarchy. I think people are just afraid. You know, that they're somehow going to piss you off and get their ass kicked. And I've always said that with Chuck Zito, you're his best friend and he'll die for you. But fuck him over and you fucked over the last person you'll ever fuck over again. And that's Chuck Zito. And I think people that don't get you are intimidated by that.
Yeah. Well, I like it says, just Kurt said everybody welcomed me with open arms, and I feel, very grateful to work on the show with
I think it was
everybody. And like I
great for
said,
your
from
career.
Charlie Hunnam to Katie Seagal to everybody, man. Tommy Flanagan and Boone Kirkman and Boone. Everybody. I mean,
The show is great. You were great on it, but let's say why we're here tonight. One of the main reasons why we're here tonight. And again, we have a lot of laughs on the show, and we've had a lot of great guests.
A lot, yeah.
But tonight it's a little somber, and there's a buddy of mine, a mutual friend of ours.
Ours, yeah.
Yeah. We all remember, especially boxing fans, but it was in all the news, so people remember the story about Arturo Gatti and his tragic death. 2009, I believe, was
July
11th. Yeah. He was murdered. He was a great boxer, one of the greatest boxers of all time. Millions of fans around the world. For people who don't know this story, Arturo was murdered in South America, in Brazil, in 2009. And the story, as far as I know, has remained open. This case has never been solved. The people that are behind the murder of this great boxer and a great man who was really a regular here at this club when it was called Scores, now it's Sapphire, never been brought to justice. So Chuck and I have a mutual friend, Mike. Do you want me to say your last name, Mike?
Of course.
Mike, say your last name.
Sciarra.
Mike Sciarra was a great friend of Arturo and refused to let this story end with just an open case, with just the people that involved getting away basically with murder. So I met Mike a few weeks ago, known him for years, but the story came up to me, and I was fascinated by the amount of research you have done to find the people behind Arturo's murder. Arturo. Am I saying it wrong?
Yeah, that's okay. We'll correct you.
Because I have a Jamaican Irish accent. So
all right. We're going to give you a New York accent.
Yeah, give me the right accent.
Arturo.
Toro.
Yeah, Toro.
There
you go.
I always say
the original blood and guts warrior that never gave his fans a dull fight.
Ever.
You weren't going to let his death go unsolved. You've dedicated the last few years to finding out who the murderer was.
I had a lot of help with that, be quite honest. Pat Lynch, Joe Mora from Boston, Paul Cialino out of Chicago, and a whole host of other people that they brought on board, and an extensive investigation that went on for almost 16 months. These guys traveled around the world to put together the pieces of the puzzle to come up with this. This is the holy grail of what really happened to Arturo. And some of the biggest name coroners, forensic scientists, doctors, and so on are experts, and they consulted us and gave us their reports, which are all outlined through here. Dr. Cyril Weck, Dr. Stanley Zilo, Andre Stewart from 21st Century Forensics, Dr. Bowles, Alfred Bowles, and the list goes on. Brent Tarvey, a forensic scientist that came out of Alaska. I mean, every one of their reports are in here. Michael Baden.
But let me ask you. Let's go back a step. Why are you so involved in this case? Tell me the relationship between the two of you that brought you to this point where you invested literally tens of thousands of dollars to try and solve this case. Where did it begin for you?
I know Arturo since he's about 17 years old when he first came in from Canada with his brother. They both came down here to start training and boxing. They started at a little gym in Jersey City. And several months into it, Arturo realized that gym wasn't for him. It was called Ringside. Mm-hmm. Guy's name was Mario, and he wanted nothing to do with Mario, and he had left. And he joined Pat Lynch's team. And he started to grow and develop, and he became the world champion. And he was just a young kid that came down from Canada following his big brother, who he idolized, Joe. He idolized Joe. And later on, Joe was supposed to become the world champion. Joe was a tremendous boxer, but he didn't have the heart or the chin that Arturo had. Arturo didn't have Joe's skills as far as boxing was concerned, but Arturo's heart and chin was immeasurable. And he wound up becoming the world champ. And Joe retired early, got retired by Terry Norris. And from that day forward, I mean, Arthur just kept developing and growing, and our friendship along with his boxing career, we became closer and closer and closer. And over the years, he became world champion several times. But, you know, it wasn't just about his boxing skills. Inside the ring, he was a lion. Outside the ring, he was a lamb. He was a gentleman. He represented the Gatti family out of Canada. Very respectful. His mother brought them up. Really tight-knit, real, you know, blue-collar Italian family. Hard-working people, home on Sundays, home at night, had their dinner, their pasta. Arturo's dad passed away when he was a young kid. And his father always pushed them to be boxers and always wanted to see him do well. The father was an electrician. He got hurt, he fell off a ladder, and he wound up bleeding internally and passed away. And Arthur always wanted his father to see him become something. And he was so excited about that. And then after the father passed, he always says, I'm never going to disappoint my dad. I'm representing my family's name. Every time he stepped in that ring, the first thing that was on his mind was his father. Because when he was a little kid, the father would be on the side of the ring watching him fight. The same thing with Joe. And he always wanted his dad to be part of that. And unfortunately, that didn't happen.
He was a lion in the ring. He's a legend.
Humanitarian. He was a lot of things.
But then something went horribly wrong.
Yeah.
And it's a case that we hear not just in boxing, but it's so much in life. He meets a woman. And this is
low life stripper cunt. That's what he meant.
This is where the story begins, as far as we're all concerned today, because this is what cost him his life. He met this woman who was a stripper, and you can confirm that.
She was a stripper that was working in a club in Jersey, in Passaic, and one of the customers told her about another club in Jersey, which is the Squeeze Lounge in Weehawken. And what had happened was, she wound up coming down there. Arturo and I used to hang out there all the time. He saw her. She had a beautiful body. The conversation started. She started asking a lot of questions the first day she met him, who he was, because he had come into the club with a dog, a German Shepherd. He came walking in with the club with the dog, and she was like, who's this guy in the club with the dog's the size of a horse? And she started asking all the questions. Who is he? And she knew from day one that he was a lightweight champ of the world, a very good-looking kid, and he had tons of money. And she set her sights on him, and vice versa. He saw her body. He wanted to fool around with her. You know, it was his type of thing. He liked girls like that, and they wind up getting together. And she played him. I believe it was a plan from day one.
So
in retrospect to what I've learned, I think it was a plan from day one.
But the way
out of all the guys she's fucked, all of a sudden she gets pregnant by him. Very convenient.
But this story ended with somebody dying.
He didn't die, Chauncey. No. Chauncey, he didn't die. He was brutally murdered and drugged. Yeah. There was drugs found from the second autopsy by the Canadians and Michael Baden. There was drugs found in his system that can only be purchased in Brazil. And that's in the autopsy report, which I have.
Let's take a step back.
Go ahead.
People watching the show, so we don't get people confused. All right, so he meets this girl at a strip club. They hook up. They have a baby. They have a child together.
Conveniently gets pregnant.
All right. She has the kid. Now, and correct me if I go wrong, if I'm incorrect in any way, I want you to stop me immediately.
Sure.
From what I know the story, the relationship doesn't work, doesn't pan out, right? She's in Canada.
They're both in Canada
They're
at
both
this
in
time.
Canada. Now, the relationship
She gave
falls
birth
apart.
to Arturo Jr. in Canada.
Okay.
The moment after he was born, she then got a dual passport and citizenship for Arturo Jr. in Brazil.
Right.
Then the argument started. Then the fight started.
Okay.
And then he saw the mishandling of Arturo Jr., which became abundantly clear later on when she was arrested for his murder.
She actually got arrested and spent 3 weeks in jail.
Let's go back to his last fight, the Gomez fight, the night I met her.
I wasn't there, actually. I was in Pennsylvania with my son, Max.
Met the woman.
She was a pig.
What did you think of her?
She was screaming, cursing like a truck driver. And I turned around to Pat. I says, who's that pig? That's his girlfriend. I says, well, you better get rid of her. She's a piece of shit. And it started that night.
You had a bad
And
feeling about him from the
then
start.
he got a bad cut. He got a bad, split his whole lip open. He needed a bunch of stitches. I'm the only one. She never even went to the hospital to see how he was doing. That's how much she cared about the guy. I'm the only one who went to the hospital, stayed with him the whole time until he got stitched up and brought him back to the hotel.
The mother of his child never
She
came
didn't
to
even
him.
care.
Oh,
She didn't even care.
Not at that point. She didn't have the baby with him yet.
This is before the baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is before the baby.
Okay.
Yes.
This is when the first night I met her, I says, who's that?
Okay.
She had a mouth on her worse than me, and I got a pretty good New York mouth on me. But she was a piece of shit from day one when I met her.
You had a bad
She didn't
feeling.
give two shits about him. Never went to the hospital to see him. Didn't care about him. And when we went back, and then she, of course, in front of the cameras, in the dressing room, she's all over him. Oh, honey, let me see.
cameras are on,
And the cameras are on, yeah. And I'll never forget her face after she got released. After getting arrested for his murder, then getting her released. What, 2 weeks later?
3 weeks. I think it was 3 weeks.
18
Okay,
days.
3 weeks.
18
3
days.
weeks later, okay? Coming out with a smile out of her face. If she cared anything about him, she was
devastated,
smiling,
be
laughing,
devastated.
everything. Just a disrespectful bitch.
All right, so now begins the investigation. Now you get involved, Mike, and the investigation begins.
Well,
You
after
know-
the murder, I got involved.
all right.
So then they go to Brazil, the two of them.
Right.
He went to go to get divorced from her. He was
Well, no,
they didn't want
original-
nobody
what happened
you can
was-
tell more than that. I mean, I know. I mean, you know, and I
What-
know what I know. But
What started to happen was she got closer to him after the fight, the Gomez fight. They wind up moving from Parlin, New Jersey, a house he purchased,
Right.
so he could be close to his daughter,
Right.
which he started an argument with Erica, who was the mother of Arturo's daughter, Sophia, so that they weren't speaking. And then she started a big commotion amongst the family, and then they went to Canada because he had just finished building a huge condominium complex, and she wanted to go up there. So they went. He moved
Okay.
into Canada.
Go ahead.
So as one word led to another, they started to get a little closer. They got married in Las Vegas. After the marriage in Las Vegas, they then moved to Canada. They moved into a penthouse of a building that he just recently built. She became pregnant, and they had Arturo Jr. Several months after Arturo Jr. was born, that's when the fireworks started.
Tell us. All right, let's start with that because this is what it's all about. We want to find out what
Well,
happened.
they had fights left and right. They
Okay.
had fights that were recorded in Hawaii. They had fights in New Jersey. Big disagreements where she was constantly the aggressor.
Bad relationship.
Well, she was the aggressor because she knew that the minute that she could get him to hit her, that she'd have a great case, but he
Right.
would never hit her.
Right.
This kid hit anybody without a glove. You're going to the hospital for a long time.
Right.
And he always avoided that type of a problem. He kept pushing her away. And I got all the police reports are in this Holy Bible, I call it.
You have a book there that's got to
I
be
have a
about
book here
how
of
many I don't know
exactly
how many pages. It's gotta be
400.
400 pages of the research
everything
that
that
you
happened
paid
to
for
him.
out of your pocket.
Well,
to find
Pat
out
Lynch
what
and
has
I,
happened.
Pat Lynch and I, Arturo's manager, Pat Lynch.
Arturo's
Yeah,
manager.
and he was like
Okay.
more like a father than he was a manager. I mean,
Okay.
Arthur didn't make a move without Pat, but Patty and I were behind this.
Okay.
And we put these people together with the help of Joe Moore and Paul Cialino to find out what really happened to. We just wanted to know
And let's
so we could figure it out. But as I was saying, in regard to what their relationship
Yeah.
started to diminish after the kid was born. And she kept pushing him and pushing him and pushing him to the point where he moved out of the house in January of 2009
Okay.
and moved into the basement apartment in the building in Canada that he purchased for his mother.
Okay.
He stayed there up until his demise. While he was out, she kept pushing him for a will. She kept threatening him with the kid that she was going to take the kid to Brazil. And this was going on from the beginning of January of 2009 right up until his death in July.
Okay.
Finally, she pushed him to change the will. You leave nothing for me. There's nothing. He wound up signing the will June 26th. No, I'm sorry, June 16th, 2009.
Okay.
3 weeks later, he's dead.
And the reason was he went to Brazil.
She was threatening him. She told him that if he didn't come with the kid, that she was going to come from Brazil, take the kid, and he'll never see him again. And she related the situation that had happened to a fellow by the name of Jay Goldberg,
Okay.
whose child was taken to Brazil by the wife. She remarried, died while she was giving birth, and the husband that she married decided to keep the American kid.
So he brought the child to Brazil.
Yep. Yep.
To see the mother.
And
He didn't have to do it, but he did it.
He did it because she was threatening him, because the kid had a dual passport, dual citizenship.
Right.
So she knew the minute she brought him back, she had him by the balls.
Gets off the plane in Brazil.
He's dead in 24
what happens,
hours.
What happens after that? Tell me what happens.
They go out to dinner. She goes out to dinner. According to the police report,
Right.
the chief of police who arrested her
Right.
said after his investigation that he spoke to all the people in town.
Right.
She was wearing no bra with a see-through blouse. She's wearing a very short, like tennis skirt, no underwear, bending over, creating arguments everywhere where Arturo was saying, why did you dress like that? So provocative.
So what's the point? Why was she dressing like that?
I don't know. I can't answer that question, but from what we're finding out and what we've learned, she was trying to create a situation.
A drama. Some sort of
in
drama.
the street. And their fights were starting. Arguments amongst various other people that were at the restaurants, guys hanging out. It's a town. The area in Brazil where they said was a 5-star resort.
Right.
Actually, it was like maybe a 1-star resort.
Okay.
It had no. He was on the 3rd floor. It had no elevator. It was a 3-story walk up.
Okay.
He had the baby in one arm, a diaper bag over his shoulder, and a stroller in his other hand. Walk up 3 flights of stairs. Arturo Gatti never stayed in a hotel like that.
Right.
Maybe when he was a kid.
He's in a bad part of Brazil.
The murder capital of Brazil, Porto Galinhas. The county's Pernambuco. The state is Recife. 3,600 murders a year. Just there alone. A year. And
this
That's
is
more
her,
than the whole United States.
These are her stomping grounds, her people.
No, she comes from the other side of the country.
Why would she bring him there?
That's the question. That's the $64,000 question we don't understand. Why in the world? Well, we know why. She killed him there because everybody's on the take.
It's easy to kill someone there.
50 cents. You're not even worth over there. 50 cents. And he's dead.
And
he wasn't there 24 hours in that area. He was dead.
Tell us how he
checked
died.
in
Tell
the
us
morning.
what happened. Tell us what happened.
According to the autopsy reports, they said that the autopsy report from Brazil said they had no way of testing him for alcohol and or drugs.
Right.
Half his brain was missing in his body when we got it back. A piece of his heart. His pancreas was nowhere to be found. There's no report
Stabbed
on
or
any
shot?
of
How
it.
did
The
they
toxicology report from Brazil don't exist.
How was he killed?
From what we found,
Yeah.
he was drugged. He was hit over the back of the head. He was strangled. He was not hung. He was never suspended from that staircase.
Choked.
Never,
Choked
ever
out.
once. Well, when the drugs started kicking in, they hit him over the back of the head. He has a gash in the back of his head about 2 inches wide.
All right.
Passed out onto the floor. And the strap that was found on the floor by the investigators,
Right.
when the ligature on his neck, the marking on his neck was measured, does not match the strap. It's a different size.
Okay.
There was no fibers in his skin from that particular strap that they said he was murdered with.
All right.
And his Adam's apple was crushed, according to Michael Baden, as well as Dr. Cyril Weck. The only way an Adam's apple gets crushed is if somebody's pulling back. Not if you're being hung from the top down, your body weight would pull down. When they tested the strap in Brazil, the cops the original first responders had the strap tested. It broke in 4 seconds. ESPN E60 did a piece on it. You were there when I shot it. That strap.
First initial investigation. She was the only suspect. She got charged with the murder and arrested.
Why? Okay, let's take one step back. Why did they arrest her? What evidence did they have at this point that made them arrest her?
Her dress was loaded with blood.
Initially.
She's the only person in the place. There was no way he could have been hung. There was no blood on the stairwell. There was no blood on the banister. There was no blood on the stool. Let me finish.
The physical crime?
There's no blood on the stool where he supposedly stood on, and she said that he had that ligature on the back, the cut on the back of his head from the street. There's no blood on the back of the taxi cab, other than a little doppel of blood on his shoulder.
Okay.
He got hit with a bicycle in the street.
Okay.
Got into a little altercation in the street in the township where she was parading around with no underwear.
All right, yeah.
Because some security guard got involved and Arturo wound up knocking the guy out. And then when the people saw that Arturo had hit a local person from town, they started to go after him as he had his son. He put the kid in the taxi cab. The taxi driver told him, take the kid out. He says, no. He goes, if we don't get out of here, they're going to kill you. He goes, if I didn't have the kid, I'd stay behind and I'd beat the shit out of everybody. He then got in a taxi cab and left. Went back to the hotel.
Okay.
When he got to the hotel, Amanda wasn't there.
Okay.
He asked the front desk if Amanda had come in. They said no. He asked for another cab. Went back to town looking for her. While he was in town looking for her, the fella, his name was Luciano. He was the desk clerk.
Okay.
Called the taxi that he left in to tell Arturo his wife had just arrived at the hotel. Mm-hmm. When Arturo got back to the hotel, they said she's upstairs with the taxi driver. She had no money to pay him.
Okay.
Now Arturo has a son. He has a diaper bag, and he has the stroller.
Right.
He walked up the 3 flights of stairs. But the taxi driver told us that when Arturo turned around, this is when he noticed on the back of his neck a pair of bloody boxing gloves, which was his tattoo.
Okay.
And that there was no blood on his shirt, there was no blood on the back of his head.
Okay.
This is all in this report.
Mm-hmm.
This is what he told the police. This is what he told the 2 investigators, Joe Moore and Paul Cialino, who went there.
Right.
And this is what we're finding out.
But what got the wife off the hook? So she's arrested for the crime.
What got the wife off the hook was money. In Brazil, you can get away with anything.
The evidence,
Brazilian.
the evidence all pointed.
That's the next thing, too. Very good point, Chuck.
The evidence all pointed towards the wife as the
Absolutely.
one. Were they saying that she actually committed the crime or paid someone to commit the crime?
They didn't say that. What they did say was, as they were interviewing her, she had changed the story several times. Maybe it was my stepfather, because he hated her, or my stepbrother, he hated Arturo. She then threw her stepbrother, her father, right out to the lion. Then she said, well, maybe he invited people into the apartment after she went upstairs with Junior because of the argument that they had in the street.
So
she's
saying could have been one of 1,000 people in Brazil could have done the crime.
Okay.
In her mind,
Yes,
defense.
right. Now, according to the chief of police, the second chief who wound up releasing her, his name was Pablo Alvarez. When he came onto the scene 5 days later, and Fabrizio, Arturo's kid brother, went with his nephew Freddie Robania to pick up Arturo's body, the chief said, don't worry, we got her. She's done. We know for sure she did it. We got enough evidence. They had
her dead to rights.
This is the second chief, not the first responder.
Right. Okay.
The second chief, who then later wrote it off as a suicide based on the autopsy report.
Suicide? They were calling it a suicide at one point?
18 days later, they called it a suicide based on an autopsy report.
He was stabbed, punched, tagged, and they're calling it a suicide.
They stomped on his body because Michael Batten had found footprints all over him.
And they're calling it, and they were officially calling it a suicide in Brazil.
Yeah, after 18 days. Originally, they charged her for a homicide.
That's amazing.
Put her in jail. When her lawyer went to get her released on bail, the judge said, no, I'm waiting for the coroner's report.
Right.
And then the coroner, who happened to get closed down the same year, the month was May of 2009, by the federal government of Brazil for doing shoddy autopsies from an Air France crash that had happened. They just got shut down. Now we're relying on them to give us a report.
So wait. So correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. So the case ended as a suicide, and she got released from jail.
Yeah.
And that's where everything stopped. The case is closed as far as
No, the case was never closed because the judge felt that there was something wrong.
In Brazil.
Her, but never closed the case. To this day, this case is not closed.
But
you have
been the one. But you have been, and his manager have been the two people actively going after this information. There's no U.S. legal department going after this information.
The reason why is he was a Canadian citizen. He was murdered in Brazil. So the American government has no jurisdiction over this. The Canadian government were pushing for a result, but when they got the autopsy report from Brazil. Right. They ran with it because you got to remember they just signed a big treaty or a big deal between Brazil and Canada for resources.
So they were okay with the whole suicide thing. He's a boxer. Nobody cares.
Exactly right.
And Brazil, except for that judge who didn't close the case.
The judge and the first
You got to give the judge credit for not closing the case.
She's a female judge. She's a sharp woman, and she believes to this day that Arturo was murdered. She just needed somebody to show her how. So we had this transcribed from English to Portuguese and had sent it to her and the prosecutor.
Who killed him?
And they gave it back
Right.
to Pablo Alvarez
Yes.
and said to him, we want you to reinvestigate. And he started to laugh on the staircase.
Okay.
He goes, you want me to go back and reinvestigate my own work? You mean to tell me that the American investigators came into my country, went over here and did this investigation, and I'm supposed to second guess myself? If I went to America and did that,
Right.
they'd probably lock me up.
Okay.
These were his words. So in other words, she's giving this information to the police chief, who everybody is telling us is dirty,
And yeah, what's gonna happen? He's gonna toss
to
that in the garbage.
reinvestigate his own work.
He's not gonna get. He's
Come
not gonna
on.
take the hit. So
Come on.
all right. So let's start with this. Who killed him? Who killed him?
Listen.
You know. How did he die? Tell me how he died.
He died a brutal death. He was murdered brutally. He was beaten while he couldn't respond because of the drugs that were put into his system was so strong, according to the Canadian coroner's office, it was enough to knock out a horse. And this is after he's
And then
been
the dirty
embalmed.
work. Then once he was.
This was after he was exhumed,
Yeah.
and after we got his body back with half his organs missing. So how are they supposed to do a complete autopsy? A lot of the stuff that they needed were taken out.
But the evidence is. So a lot of evidence has been destroyed. There's not a lot of
The evidence was
left.
destroyed, and the Brazilian autopsy was one page. In a murder investigation, no toxicology reports, nothing. Give me a fucking break.
Andrew,
Give
you
me
know
a
this
break.
case. Do you have any questions? Because I know you had tons of questions about this. It's so fascinating, and the work you've done is so amazing. And I know
Again, I didn't do
pulls
this
on
by
you and
myself.
Chuck. This was a friend of yours, and it pulls on your heartstrings. But we've been following this case. We've been researching it ourselves.
Besides Patty Lynch, Chuck Zito, and I,
yeah,
the three people I know legitimately care about him.
right,
He loved us, we loved him.
right. You can tell.
And I still love him. And I'm never going to let it go. Not until I find out exactly what it takes to get the Brazilian government to respond to this.
you want
Take
this,
a look
you
at
want this
this.
woman arrested.
I want justice for Arturo. Listen, I have no reason to pick on a girl. I have no reason to pick on the mother of Arturo's kid. Had she not done this, had this been a real suicide, I'd be up there supporting this girl. I'd be taking care of his son any which way I can, just like the rest of the family,
Right.
who's never seen the kid, and she's living in Canada, in Little Italy, in an apartment he purchased just prior to his murder because he hired a lawyer in May of 2009 to divorce her. And this woman came to court in Canada for the probate of the will and said, yeah, Arturo was getting a divorce. He bought an apartment to get away from her and take Junior with him.
That's why that.
And
leads
when
to the
she
suspicion
discovered all
that-
this was happening, she pretended that they were having a second honeymoon. Who the fuck has a second honeymoon 3 months earlier from their honeymoon?
right.
3 weeks after you got a new
Sounds
will
like
signed.
To me, you're saying she was afraid of losing custody of this child.
Absolutely, big
and
time.
she was afraid of losing the money that came along with being
Well,
the
she thought he
wife
was
of
worth
this famous
$6-7
boxer.
million, exactly right.
And she was about to lose all this. The best solution was to make him not exist anymore. Go ahead, Andrew.
I mean, this is such a fascinating situation because you kind of put your faith in the police force, and it kind of falls apart depending on where you
I
are.
interrupt you, Andrew. Let me tell you why. Because the police force, the original responders, they read right through her. They saw exactly what had happened at the crime scene. They saw all the evidence that they needed to push forward for a homicide conviction. And what had happened was the Monday night quarterback showed up, Pablo Alvarez, and all of a sudden he told the family, Arturo's brother Fabrizio, don't worry about nothing, we got her dead to right. As soon as he picked up and left with Arturo's body and brought him back to Canada for the funeral service, a week and a half later, we buried Arturo. We had a second memorial service here in New Jersey, and all of a sudden, the same day of the memorial service, they released her from jail. She comes out, her fingernails are painted, she's wearing a pair of sunglasses, an Ed Hardy shirt, and there's crowds of people around cheering her on. Where the fuck were these people? Who knew you? You just came into town on a supposed vacation, and all of a sudden there's hundreds of kids in the street screaming out, cheering you on, and you come out going like this. like these are my, like she's the queen and these are my loyal subjects. Where the fuck did these people come from?
And my question is, how did they now? What's the story with getting drugged? How was he drugged? And
we don't know exactly how he was drugged, but we know it was found in his system by the Canadian authorities a month later, after we had his body exhumed, and Michael Batten had gone to Canada and assisted in the second autopsy.
And they found drugs in autopsy.
They found drugs in the second autopsy that not even in the first autopsy. Nothing was mentioned in the first autopsy. So how the hell did those drugs get in his system? The same drug is only found in Brazil, nowhere else.
And he's walking around with his kid. I mean, if the story's that, well, he did the drugs, then why would he be walking around with the kid?
First off, Arturo doesn't do drugs like that. If he partied with a woman. He partied, he went out and had a couple of drinks. Maybe he did a few other things. I don't know, because I never seen it with my own eyes, because I don't condone that stuff. But I can tell you this much. With his kid, he was drinking Coca-Cola. Maybe he had a beer. Maybe two. There's no way he'd walk around drunk with his kid. I seen him the way he handled Sophia, his daughter, brother, with kid gloves. When that baby was coming over the house to be dropped off by him, where he would spend a day or two with the child, listen to me. Straight as a pin, straight as an arrow, always did the right thing. He was a tremendous father. He was madly in love with his kid. And there's no way in this planet anybody's going to tell me that Arturo was doing drugs while he was in Brazil. Those drugs that were found in his system, somebody placed it, implanted it in his drink or in his food without him knowing it, because they said it was like a horse tranquilizer.
They wanted him knocked out. Whatever he took, they wanted him knocked out.
They wanted him, helpless.
Mike, how much money have you spent on this investigation? You've been at this for a while.
Listen,
now.
Chaunce, I'm really funny with putting numbers out there, but take a look at this book.
The book says it all. The book's,
Patty Lynch,
the book says it all.
Arturo's manager.
Yeah.
I say manager because he handled him.
Yeah.
But Patty Lynch, the last 16 fights, never took one dime from Arturo's purse. Arturo told me that. Patty Lynch reached into his pocket and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. This isn't cheap. Pat Lynch.
You and Pat
was a father to Arturo.
Chuck.
I was a Dutch uncle, a brother, whatever you want to call it. And Chuck idolized Arturo, and Arturo idolized Chuck.
It sounds to me you want justice. You want justice in this man's name.
We want to clear Arturo Gatti's name.
With no question. No question about what had happened there.
Someone murdered him. It wasn't a suicide. And am I wrong by saying you know who did it?
Look, I surmise. I got information from the two investigators,
right.
Joe Mora from Boston and Paul Cialino out of Chicago.
Right.
And the information given to me has to be kept quiet because the case is still ongoing in Brazil. We're still pushing over here as well. We've done several shows. And one of the shows is going to come out with some blockbuster information that's going to make the Brazilian government stand on their heels and have to go into this area and do something about a few bad apples that they have in that country. Because I don't paint the whole country bad for what had happened. The Brazilian people are great people. They got a few bad apples.
Hell,
she happened to be one of them.
Where is she right now? Where is the wife right now?
She's in his apartment in Canada, the one that he purchased to move in after the divorce.
Is she safe in Canada? Can anything happen in Canada?
Of course,
she safe?
Absolutely. Arturo had a great big following in Canada. He was very well loved.
Can she be arrested in Canada? Can people come and get her
well,
again?
let me put it like this. If the Brazilian government listened to what the chief of police is about to say in the next several weeks,
okay,
and what he believes and the evidence that he has in regard to this, as well as all the first responders and other investigators that worked on his team, they're going to have no choice. Because keep in mind, Chauncey, 2016, the Olympics are going to Brazil. Mm-hmm. I know as a parent, if my kid was an Olympian, I wouldn't want my kid going to Brazil. You could sweep under a rug a world champion, world-renowned boxer. What was the thing
There's
that
a
you
dark
can't
cloud
sweep?
over
What
Brazil.
Was the thing? Who am I to say that you can't sweep my kid over there and nobody knows us?
All right,
This is a world champion.
This wife is standing in front of you right now. What would you say to her? Both of you guys. First you, Mike, then Chuck. Mike, first you, then Chuck. What would you say to her?
Why?
You'd say why?
Why?
Chuck, what would you say?
I wouldn't say a thing. Not a thing.
No comment.
Listen, Chauncey, we came on the show. We came on the show to tell you and his viewers and all your viewers.
There's a lot of people watching this right now.
What happened to Arturo. And, we know what happened to Arturo. He was murdered, no doubt.
Was not a suicide.
Absolutely nowhere near anything like it. Did you ever see his
champion
fights?
outside the ring.
Did you see how hard he fought?
He would have rather die in the ring than take his own life. He had everything to live for. He was a good-looking guy. Yep. He had money. He had everything.
Anybody that met him loved him.
A great family.
Anywhere he went.
Except for that pig that he married.
Anywhere he went, he was loved. Anywhere.
And we don't know. No one knows what the outcome is going to be with this story. It's an ongoing story. But I give you guys
sometime in March, and there's another one that's going to air.
What is the show? Where are we going to see?
Just the name alone.
Yeah.
It's called what?
You got the Discovery Channel that's airing in March, and you got A&E that's airing the first or second week. The Biography Channel is airing the first or second week of February.
Okay.
And then in March, they're going to have the Discovery Channel. And the Discovery Channel has some really serious evidence, and investigators from Brazil, they're going to make some blockbuster statements that the Brazilian government has to respond to. And with a lot of pushing from over here in the States, put enough pressure on our government.
And hopefully Canada, too.
Well, Canada, you know what? I got to say one thing. Canada, they're great people up there. There's a lot of Quebec and Montreal and the Little Italy up there. A lot of great people up there. But at this stage in the game, they're in bed doing business with Brazil for their resources. And, look, I'm sure that they wouldn't want to see one of their children murdered like this. But the governments, you got to really you got to lay it on the table for them to go against it. And it's not like we're trying to pin Canada against Brazil. We're trying to pin the truth against the facts, against the evidence, to get a conviction for a murder against a person who brutally killed him and took advantage of him while he was helpless and he was drugged and he was murdered with his son 20 feet away. You know what? And the following day, it had to be done that day, Chauncey, because the following day his sister Anna was getting married. He was hopping on a plane going to Florida to be with his sister, and the kid was coming with him. His sister got a phone call.
They knew they had a certain amount of time limit to commit this crime. It had to be done within X amount of time.
It was the essence of time. It was there, no doubt.
Right.
And it had to be done at that particular moment.
It's an amazing story.
Because if it didn't get done, Arturo was on his way to Florida the following morning to be in Anna's wedding in Fort. I think he was in Fort Lauderdale or Davie, Florida. Davie, and he was leaving. They didn't kill him that night. They weren't getting that chance again because of the way things went, the fight that went on, the things that she did, the provocative clothes that she wore that night. She was setting him up for some sort of disaster.
You got this man in death. I think owes you guys the friendship that you've shown him.
He showed it right back to us.
Oh, believe me.
It's an amazing. No, I can't even imagine having friends that would go this far to try and find the truth about somebody. He must have been a great. I never met him personally.
He was a great human being.
I didn't know him,
guy.
but to have, I know you two men. I know both of you guys, and I know for you two to dedicate your time and your efforts and to come on this show and talk about
Patty
it.
Lynch.
That it means a lot to me. What this man must have been like, because you guys would never do something like this for someone who didn't deserve this kind of effort. You loved him, and I got to give you a lot of props for coming on the show tonight and talking the truth and talking about what really should be going on here, and hopefully the truth will come out and the people behind this will be convicted.
You're right, and what was funny, Chauncey, later on down the road, his brother Joe took sides with his wife, the one that's behind all of this. And I got a phone call because Joe did a piece with the CBS, Aaron Moriarty, 48 Hours.
Okay.
And he went on with a fellow by the name of Mario Costa, and they said Arturo was suicidal, They even wrote a book. I don't even want to mention the book because I don't even want to give it a shout in any which way, shape, or form.
Okay.
And they went on and said, yeah, Arturo came in my bar one night asking me for a gun. Because he had 100 guns in the place, because there was like 5 murders in the place and never got closed down by the ABC for whatever reason. I can't imagine why they wouldn't shut Mario down. But Joe Gatti then goes on, yeah, my brother was suicidal. My brother was on all sorts of drugs, this, that, the other thing. He definitely killed himself. And he said this on 48 Hours, maybe several months ago. Ironically, there was a terrible situation that happened back in December of 2012 up in Connecticut in Sandy Hook, where 20 children and 6 school teachers were brutally murdered by some lunatic. And it just so happened that it was a rainy Friday, and Joe Gatti, his wife Vicky, and their daughter Versace decided to ride up there because the daughter wanted to light a candle for these victims. The kid felt compelled to do something, which is really sweet. Versace's a beautiful girl. Joe's kids are beautiful kids. So he drove up there to light a candle with Vicky. And one of the reporters sees this young lady and says to her, why are you here? She goes, we're here to light candles for these victims. And her mother, Joe Gatti's, Arturo's sister-in-law, said, we had a family member that was murdered. And the reporter said to her, who would that be? He goes, Arturo Gatti. You're a relative of Arturo Gatti? And she said, yes. You see that gentleman over there lighting the candle? That's Arturo Gatti's brother, Joe. And here it is, Dennis Hamill, Saturday, December 22nd, in his news column,
News. Yeah.
that he writes that he spoke with Arturo Gatti's brother, Joe Gatti, and he said, yes, I know exactly how these people's families feel because my brother was murdered too. 6 months earlier, he's telling everybody in the world that this kid was suicidal and a drug user. Here he is.
Well, you don't know how a writer can change words. You know,
This isn't a writer.
This is from his mouth. The book could be anything, right?
Not necessarily, because Joe Gatti, he seems to be going, he's a little off kilter, if you will. You know, I don't want to abuse him anymore. He's got probably enough going on in his head.
Right.
And between his brother being murdered, him abusing his mother in the papers in Canada, disgracing the family's name, and writing a book with all packs of lies. Mario Costa and his brother-in-law Rocco wrote it and said terrible stuff about a lot of people, totally untrue, and especially about Arturo. Had he been alive, they would have never opened their mouths.
Right.
Because he had that Chuck Zito
you can't sue
effect.
somebody who's dead. I mean,
That,
vice
and not
versa.
only that,
Yeah.
Arturo had a Chuck Zito effect on people. He was the nicest guy in the world.
Just don't be his enemy.
But if you fucking crossed him, you had a problem. And Chuck is the same way, and so am myself.
Yeah.
I don't put myself in the same stature I put those two guys in.
Just to show you, I walked Arturo Gatti in the ring the last 10 years, all his fights. I've never met Joe Gatti. So they were never close.
Right. He was never there. Never
never
there.
never had his fights.
Here's the kid that was following you. You're supposed to be the world champ. He becomes the world champ and you become second fiddle. It's a little hard for him to swallow.
Right.
Not to mention that every time Arturo did something, he always took care of his family.
And at the end of the day, what this all about is the
Jealousy?
truth. The truth.
Backstabbing?
I would say the truth. This is a story about the truth. If I wrote a book on this, it would be called The Truth. The Truth.
That's what we're
Two
getting to.
words.
Because the Brazilian government did a 1 or 2 page report, and this is
Well,
an
the coroner's
extensive.
office, I don't hold the whole government,
Okay.
Chuck, responsible. Just the coroner's office
Whatever.
and the chief of police. You know why?
Nobody made an extensive report like this.
Nobody.
And
Pat Lynch and I
That's
did.
amazing to me.
This says
Paul
the
and
truth
Joe.
right here.
That's amazing
Okay.
to me.
That
And
Chucky.
Michael and
Chucky, I want you to have
and
this
Pat Lynch
this
did all
report
this.
because you don't have one.
And it's going to come out, and we're going to clear his name.
And I want to thank both of you guys. Both of you guys to me are heroes to me. And I want to thank both of you guys for coming on this show and talking about this tonight. I know it's a tough conversation because you're talking about a lot of love and a lot of pain. Thank you for coming on the show tonight. It means a lot to us. And you know what? This show is broadcast around the world. I hope that somewhere, someone in Brazil, somebody in Canada, or someone in America sees this show tonight.
Officials.
Someone watches this show in its entirety, hears what you're saying, and if this show helps 1% to bring the people that did this to justice, then this was worth it for you guys coming here tonight. I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Mike. And I want to thank Andrew, my executive producer.
Andrew, thank you for having us.
The GFQ Network. And we'll be back next week. Chuck, Zito, keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Mike,
Thank you.
you're the best. You know, you mean the
Chaunce.
world
I
to me.
appreciate that.
And we'll be back next week,
that.
everybody.
Thank you
Keep
for having
on
us.
this story. This is a story that's just beginning.
Oh, this story's not over.
This story's not over, but it's going to
This
end.
is not over.
And watch the is it Discovery?
Yeah, we got A&E,
It's called
A&E biography.
Prenup to Murder.
No, that's A&E biographies, Prenup to Murder.
One of them is called Prenup to Murder, and that's the right.
Watch
That's
for
coming
the
out.
next couple of weeks. We're going to see this on national
Oh, over
TV.
the next couple of months, you're going to see
Okay.
2 different shows, and you're going to see a lot more news about it because I ain't letting it go. I'll never let it go. Because when his daughter grows up, I'm going to show her another report of the truth. She's going to be able to read this. She's going to hold her head high. She's going to walk down the street, know that her father has true friends that cared about him, and we're hell bent on getting the truth out there, so that those kids to walk through the streets in this world will hold their head up high, and his family members as well, his mother, his brothers, his sisters,
I'll
his
sum it
nieces
up,
and
Mike.
nephews.
I'll sum it up. Justice, everybody. We'll be.